Welcome back to Sage Connections. Today I'm joined by Dan Mozes, owner of Ethos Performance Gym in Plymouth, Michigan. Dan works with a wide range of people from everyday individuals who want to feel stronger and move better to elite athletes competing at the highest levels, including Olympic athletes. In this conversation, we talk about what training actually looks like at the highest levels of sport and what lessons from elite performance can translate to the rest of us. Because while most people aren't training for the Olympics, we're all trying to build strength, resilience, and longevity in our own lives. Enjoy. You've trained Olympic athletes and so many high level performers, professional athletes. When you're preparing somebody at that level, what changes as they get closer to competition, both physically and psychologically?
The nervousness is one of the biggest things is you have high level athletes, even with the younger kids. I mean, we look at, I say the word 8 to 88, everything in between there that we train as if it's a high level athlete trying to get ready to go to the Olympics, or if it's a CrossFitter about to go to one of the CrossFit games. The biggest thing is their nerves and trying to keep them, calm and collective when they get to that point. And also, too, one of the biggest things that's going to change is their training protocols, because again, you're getting close to that competition and they want to do more, but you have to make sure that they kind of keep their head on a level and being able ready to go.
Yeah. So when you get to that level, when you're sort of in that mode of competition, kind of coming up to it, do you think performance is more limited by the body or the mind?
I think a little bit of both. Obviously, we always use the analogy with the mind can conceive, the body will achieve. So obviously, I think the mental capacity, the mental component is huge because you have a lot of those people, and we've had these athletes over and over again. They may not be the most blessed athlete or gifted athlete, but their mental capacity is times 10 of the guy who's just as gifted athletically. But then they outperform them because they literally think that way. And I think that's one of the biggest things with people who are high level competitors and high level and when you look at a guy like Michael Jordan, right, for example, his level of mental, he wasn't maybe the best gifted athlete, in high school, but his mental fortitude drove him out of this world. So it's a perfect example.
Yeah. And I think a lot of these people are, I think when you're at that level of competition, there is this feeling of like, someone's always kind of behind you, like someone's always a little younger, a little faster, a little better, a little, and so
Mhm.
you're right. Like the people that can kind of hold it together and, get their blinders on and keep moving forward are probably the ones that do the
Yeah,
best.
yeah, for sure. I mean, we've had guys. You look at a guy like I've used Brandon Graham as an example. He's a Super Bowl champion. I've trained. He's been in Philadelphia for probably the past call it 6 or 7 years now. But he always comes back, says hi, trains for a day when he's in town seeing family. But I saw a video the other day. He was at it was an old video at University of Michigan. We were there training him in 2000 and I want to call it probably 2007 maybe. And he's still playing it to this day. He retired, came out of retirement, played this year, had a good year, limited with different injuries. But although that being said, he started his career where he's the hungry young kid trying to be the 13-year vet. Now he's a 13-year vet, and he's making sure he keeps up to playing to the level he was when he was 21. So you got to make those guys, push them. You have to be smart with it. But obviously, the biggest thing with a guy like him is his mental drive is like no other. He's blessed, gifted genetically, but then again, you just got to keep him, moving on that path. Like he was playing, like he was 21, just being able to change some different protocols for that.
Yeah. Have you ever had to hold an elite athlete back from overtraining? Like, sort of what does it all teach about ambition, discipline, restraint?
Yeah, some athletes. I think you look at those athletes that have like triathlete things that have a lot of different complexity in their training systems. You have to gauge different things that are going on in their life. Because you have an athlete that swims, bikes, and runs. They have to do some strength training. They have to do recovery. So you have to do all of them, but you just have to really strategically schedule different things of what they're doing. And then you also have those athletes I look at as a younger athlete that on these travel teams. We have these athletes that are playing 365 days a year because that's what their sports telling them to do, or their coach or their parents telling them to do. Where we have to almost play that devil advocate of saying, hey, maybe you should step back from training for a little bit and get back into the training world, and not playing the sport so much.
Yeah, and I'm sure on a professional level that's so hard because, from sort of some of the people I've worked with, they want to get out there as soon as possible. I mean, that's their job, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so it's this like you got to play this game of um, not being in recovery for too long, but also uh, not letting them go too fast because the risk of re-injury at such a high level is so high.
Agreed. Yeah, and I think that's one big thing is you look at different sports. I think it's the mentality too as well. Is I played football, basketball, baseball. They're told, in my opinion, that the perfection is the sport, so they have to do the sport all the time. Whereas like hockey, they want to go, 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 and sometimes we have to tell them to stop. Whereas other sports, we have to tell them, okay, let's go a little bit more, do a little bit more. So the sports are different from that capacity as well.
Yeah. So, what do high level athletes understand about patience and long-term progress that maybe the average gym goer struggles with?
I think if some of those athletes that are newer in the quote unquote game, if they can see and have a person to show that direction, like a guy like we had Aiden Hutchinson in here when he was coming out, and we had Brandon Graham. So you have two guys who are playing the same sport, same position. You see what an individual his tenure has done to his body, his what he's trying to obtain, and that person trying to drive to that aspect is nice to have. So if you have a role model and you can be around that role model, that's one of the best thing driving forces that you can have as an athlete.
Yeah. What do you think something that elite athletes don't do that everyday people should probably stop doing immediately?
Say that again.
So, what do you think some elite athletes, some of the things that they don't do that normal people do that maybe they should stop? Is there anything?
I know one thing is well some of those elite athletes nowadays, I feel like we've hit like kind of a different turn in the training protocol, not protocols, what athletes see. I think a lot of, I use the word Michael Jordan, I use the word Kobe Bryant. I know that they lived in the gym. I think athletes like that now are now looking at, I hate using the word recovery, but doing less is better. That's not the case all the time, right? I think you have to find a happy medium of recovery, strength, and sport. I feel a lot of people now are so dived into the sport aspect that they are forgetting the training protocols are what's gonna separate them when they're 8 weeks in, 16 weeks in, and that's a big thing is staying with those protocols as well.
So, this is interesting. So I talked to Allie Babcock about, 3x4 genetics a few weeks ago, and we talked about how different people have different capacities for different type of movement. So you have like endurance people, and then you have power athletes. Do you find, I don't know if you can tell that, without getting the test, but like, do you find that some people, some even elite athletes need more recovery and like more power versus more endurance, like to kind of put them in the most elite shape that they can be in?
Yes, and I think that's one amazing things that she does, that she has that tool to be able to show us what that is, and then we could work towards that. I feel like that's where science is. I think science is what you have to use science for the training protocols, recovery protocols too. But it's a nice tell of that, and you can definitely see that aspect when you train them too as well. Because you use a guy like we had Peter Vanderkay, who was a sprinter in the Olympics. This is a long time ago when we were at U of M. But you see him compared to an endurance swimmer, you can see a massive training aspect of what their work capacity is. And that was before, obviously back in, let's say 2007 or eight. So that was before all these now things are coming to light with science. So it's nice to have these tools, but still for a training protocol, you can see, the ones that are going to excel and the ones who are going to do well, and then the ones who obviously aren't built for that sport.
Yeah. What do you think the culture is like inside the high performance training environment? And how much does that environment actually influence outcomes?
It's huge. I think everybody's a product of their environment. So you go into a place where it's docile and quiet, and I know you've been in our gym before, and you're going to mold to that surrounding. I think if you're going to a place for recovery, it should be very, very quiet. Like I'm in a recovery area now, and I'm probably talking too loud for everybody who's here. But I think to get a level of training out of somebody, you have to bring that emotional factor out of them. So if you go into a gym and you're trying to get a guy to do his whatever max power thing and it's docile and quiet, his performance is going to be low. But if you go into a place where the music is energetic, you have a good coach training you the right way, making sure that you're watching all the coaching cues, he's going to be doing amazing things with that.
Yeah, that's a very interesting point, and something I don't think I considered when we shared the clinic with the gym, and there were days when you guys would play that heavy metal and it's
Yep.
really loud, and we were trying to get older people to recover their knee post-op knees and things like that, and so it didn't really drive for that. But you're right, like I can see how like a power athlete that's trying to max out his sets or reps or whatever it is, needs kind of that environmental motivation to kind of get.
Oh yeah. I mean, you look at, and you've been here obviously for a long time, and you've seen, we have a guy, let's use Dylan Larkin as an example. He's training next to a person who has a spinal cord injury, who's crawling on the ground, next to a 80-year-old who had a knee replacement. Now, is that music sometimes not the right factor for the 80-year-old, right? But it's that level of, going through the hardship together, whether it just be a guy trying to break a PR in a power clean, or the girl trying to walk again, or the 8-year-old with a knee replacement. So the energy is energetic, and it vibes off it. And that's where you see the massive results from people, because they want to be like that person. And that person wants to be, in making sure that they're working hard for the neurological person. And that guy with a knee replacement wants to strive to be, working harder than that person who's on the ground. So it's an amazing environment.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's a perfect segue. So how do you think elite athletes see themselves maybe differently than recreational like lifters? Like how important is identity to performance?
I think it sets you apart because, again, at the end of the day, no matter what sport you play, I think you go back to the times where you're in a hardship and you have to reflect on those. So, if you're in the fourth quarter of a football game, or if you're in overtime for hockey, or if you're in the last lap of the swim meet, you go back to the mental hardships that you went through, because you can't replicate that all the time, right? If you're practicing at yourself in a pool, how are you supposed to replicate, whenever you're in segment two of whatever it is, and you're grinding against the person you're competing against? But what you can grind and compete against is your mental hardships that you go through the gym. And I say the hardships is not meaning like you're doing something to where you're completely exhausted and you're throwing up, right? That's not what I'm talking about. It's more of the, okay, how can I don't feel good today, or I'm tired, or my dog's sick, or my kids kept me up all night. How can we push through those limits? Because it's going to happen in sport. It's going to happen in your competition. So those things are going to correlate to what you're trying to do on the field. Those are the same things you're trying to do in life, but those training protocols are going to help you kind of push through those limits.
Yeah. Well, and it sounds like kind of from what we spoke about before that there are times that recovery truly is needed in order to progress maybe the next day or the next week, right?
100%. Yeah. Recovery is, I go, and you look at these people, and I hate to use the word CrossFit because there's pros and there's cons, but people look at like they say the world's fittest athlete in the world of CrossFit, which we're not a CrossFit gym, but people see them lifting all these heavy weights and doing all these crazy exercises. But I guarantee you, on the back end, what you don't see is the recovery tools that they have to do, or they're going to break. So it's the same thing with these elite athletes. Same thing, right? They're playing so many minutes in a football game. They're doing so many things on the hockey rink. They're doing so many things on the court. But if they don't do the training protocols or the recovery protocols on the back end the day after, the day before, then they're just going to be another number on the bench, or going to be injured. So those things are very important.
Yeah. So if someone still wants to be training hard and moving well in their 50s and 60s and beyond, what should they start doing in their 30s and 40s and
I
20s?
thought I love this. So I always use, when I give these tours, because I give tours to my 9-year-old daughter, right? I have kids who come here as early as 6 years old, and we had a heart attack recovery patient, and here he was probably about 75. The biggest thing we say is, a object in motion stays in motion. So when those wheels are moving, you got to keep them moving, because you see people, I use the geriatric world of, there's people who just stop moving, become sedentary. Next thing they're on a cane, they're in a walker, they're in a wheelchair, they're in a nursing home, they're in assisted living. And then actually, they're not around anymore. So we use that from that analogy from the older population. But those ones who are 20s and 30s, and they want to, or 30s and 40s, and they want to do athletic movements, we can still do those. We just modify. I had my shoulder replaced. Do I want to go out there and be able to throw a baseball with my kid? Yes. Do I want to make sure that my rotator cuff is still intact and perfectly fine? Yes. So we can train like athletes, but doesn't mean we are athletes in a sense, right? So it's a nice thing that what we do is I make sure that we obtain goals and we have people who have that athletic mindset, even if they're training to just, be able to get out of bed in the morning without back pain, or if they're trying to be able to, go on a 2 mile hike with their grandkid because they want to feel good. So it's nice to have goals, but then be able to train like an athlete as well.
Yeah. So, okay, right now there's if you go online, if you go on Instagram, there's a million different ways to train. And just like there's a million different diets, right? There's, progressive overload and HIIT training. And like, should you do cardio 4 times a week? Should you just lift heavy weights? Should you do a split, of different muscle groups? Like, do you think it's individualized for the person, or do you have sort of a philosophy on how to train best?
Yes, we do. So we have a philosophy, but also depends on so many different factors. The sport, is there not a sport? The age, the gender, all these different things we look at. And one thing I love about we have principles and base guidelines on what we're trying to do for athletic development and even human development. But people will shut down a principle or they'll say my principle is the best. I think my big thing is like picking and choosing because I hear so many talks on YouTube, so many talks on Instagram, so many people that are experts or non-experts, but I don't sit there with an eye and say, well, they're wrong, they're wrong, they're wrong, or wow, that's right, that's right, that's right. I just try to compare this to what I believe and how I can make things work. I use the analogy like you see people running with a parachute. Okay, is it a gimmick? It can be if it's not used the right way. Or you see people with different apparatuses or different things there. I just look at it as how are you using those things in regards to my principle. That's one big thing. It's like the diets. Like again, there's all this different diet out there. It depends on what the goal of the individual is. It's the same way with training too as well.
Okay. So for someone who feels intimidated by going to the gym or strength training, how would you help build their confidence step by step?
Oh, I think that getting them in like that's one big thing is like, we have a lot of people who inquire and email or call and try to, set up that tour. And I say, once we get a person through the doors, they're here because they sense the level of love, respect, the energy, a place that's completely different. Now, those people who are on the bubble, because we can talk on this all we want, but until somebody comes into a location, that's why I'm a huge believer of training at a location, whether it be in your basement or in the hotel gym. But I think when you have a home, it's a great place to be. I'm a big believer of getting because I love this thing is like a lot of the females they see this as a performance gym or a male only gym where you're lifting heavy weights. We probably and this we probably have more female athletes, general population people than we do anything else, and I absolutely love it because I do believe that's one of the biggest niches that we're trying to do is fill that bubble of it's a man's gym or a performance gym. It's a place where I'm trying to change humanity in general.
Yeah. So if somebody is, since we're talking about women, if somebody is postpartum or recovering or pregnant or recovering from injury or rebuilding after a setback, what do you think the smartest way is of re-entering training safely and effectively?
I think getting with the perfect expert. So that's the biggest thing is like that's what I did with Ethos when I took it and made it Ethos is and this, I've grabbed people that are experts in their fields, right? So if somebody is postpartum, who do they go see, right? If somebody has coming back from an ACL injury, and so it's like so big thing is like whenever I put them in forth of the experts, so people no matter what it is, and that was one big thing is I was tired of wearing so many hats as a owner. I had to be the psychiatrist. I had to be the dietitian. I had to be the strength guy. I had to be the physical therapist. So now you have people who are perfect in this, and then we work in synergy. We have a physical therapy department. So if somebody's coming back from an ACL injury, and they're 6 months, how do we work together to get them back to return to play and have confidence and have communication? And the same thing with like females who are coming back, like my wife, who just had our amazing daughter. This what was her birthday? December 18th, right? So December 18th. So she's coming back into the world of training, right? Now she can't do this like she when she had her first kid. So we have to do things a lot different and being able to use those tools and knowledge. But again, I'm not the expert. So I talk to the experts about what they see, what they know, and then we collaborate. So I'm not just kind of YouTubing, kind of flying on the whim. We have a great community level of communication with different aspects of trainings.
Yeah. So what does true strength mean to you beyond sort of the aesthetics and the performance numbers? What does it mean?
True strengths, I truly believe it's mental. I say the word mental. I believe you have a great system and protocols in place, but if you don't believe it, you can't achieve it. So again, I'm just a big mental capacity person. It's a person that can come in and no matter what the day is, and if they want to set new goals, you're going to be strong and have true strength. And if you want to come in, you want to run 10 miles that day, being able to obtain those goals and then have true strength in doing it. So I'm a big believer of, the mental true strength is more important than the outside because I mean, you've seen these things and the word true strength you have these people who are in these crazy circumstances. I've seen these videos, of a car flipping on somebody, and then their father lifts the car, so a kid can get off the thing. It's like that wouldn't happen. I don't care what you've been training for. I don't care of anything. There is a level of strength involved in the body that comes from this that's unfathomable.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think working, like you said, like putting it all together, working in an environment that's very supportive and that's very collaborative, where all the experts talk to each other, and having this community builds, I think, that resilience and that mental strength as much as the physical strength, because that's what we all need, right?
Agreed. I mean, it has to be a complete chain. I mean, we have physical therapy, they're an amazing profession. We have a nutritionist, they're an amazing profession. We have a dietitian, amazing profession, chiropractic care, massage therapy, strength training. So we have all those parts of a human body for a reason or things that need to come together to make a better human being. And if people want to be 10% involved in their nutrition and 90% in their strength, okay, right? We want to make it a complete goal. Or if they want to be 10 or 90% of what they do in life is the nutrition aspect and 10% strength, that's okay, right? But our goal is to just do whatever we can to make them overall a better human being.
Yeah. Okay, so last question. What's one myth about training that you wish would disappear?
I did see this question. That was one of the last ones. It was lifting's going to make you bulky,
Yeah.
or lifting weights is going to make me look like a man, or lifting weights is not going to make me attractive. And this is from a female aspect. I hate that word because you've seen the studies come out now as well. And I don't care if you're lifting 5 pounds or 1,000 pounds. There is huge benefits, especially as we get older, to strength training. And again, I know I believe in yoga. I think yoga is an amazing thing, but I also it's one of those things that should be supplemented with something, right? Again, like Pilates. Pilates is an amazing thing. It should be supplemented with something. So as much as you like to do one thing, you should do more than just that aspect. Because I'm a big believer in flexibility, mobility, of course. But again, in our training protocols, there's a version of strength training. So if you're coming in, you want to stay toned, that's perfectly fine. But in regards to like longevity of your lifespan, of your bone density, that strength training has to happen.
Yeah. I don't think any of us have ever seen a woman lift even, like squat, whatever, 50 pound, 100, I don't even, like, and just show up just like the Hulk.
Yeah, no. And
Yeah.
again, I mean, that's just I mean, there's all these studies coming out now that if you don't strength train, then longevity in your life, it's not going to happen, right? Or the best way to fight off diseases and possibly cancers and just overall better immune system is through strength training, cardiovascular training. So all those things are coming to light. And I do believe, after after COVID, there was more of a realization on, being healthy. And I think instead of worrying about the pharmaceutical companies and taking the pills, and this is my opinion, and not worrying about your diet, now it's going the other way of, hey, let's take a proactive approach, not a reactive. So let's try to do whatever we can to prevent things from happening from strength training, cardiovascular training, nutrition, diet, wellness, all in general, instead of being reactive and saying, okay, well, now I have, diabetes, or now I have some form of cancer, or I'm obese. So now we can do all those things. They're being proactive instead of reactive.
Yeah, I agree. I agree that the industry itself, the healthcare industry, is moving towards prevention, longevity, recovery, and sort of maintaining health versus
Mhm.
a reactive sort of approach that we've had for a very long time, which means like only go to the doctor when we're sick or something's broken or torn or whatever. Now there's more emphasis on prevention of injury. And
Agreed.
and to your other point, regarding kind of like lift, like some of the, I mean, all the athletes that I've ever worked with, when we worked together, were all amazing. But the ones that really struck me were actually the wrestlers.
Oh yeah.
The wrestlers were, the most sort of like dense tissue wise, very strong, but they were also the most flexible.
Yes, I mean they have to have that elasticity is such a big thing for them because they get these situations on the mat that are very jeopardizing, right? You see those guys, and they're also doing a lot of exercises in full range of motion. Whereas football, a lot of those guys are stiff. They're probably a little more power oriented, so their quick twitch muscle fibers are active way more than some of those. I look at wrestling as a power sport, yes, but there's also an endurance factor, right? If you're on the mat and you're making small little strikes at a powerful motion, that's not going to be as much as a power aspect as a football player where they're striking as hard as they can for quick seconds. But those guys are going through full ranges of motion, right? And I think a lot of their joints have to be more pliable because again, you're sitting there on your back and your arms wrapped around your head for a good 15, 20 seconds, and that's in dynamic sense is a flexibility concept of itself.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So if there is any other last words for anybody who's maybe new to this or who wants to get into it, where do we
I
start?
I think just dive in. I think even if you, well, yeah, dive in or put your toe in, right? I think one of the biggest things is making sure that you do the research, you have a trustable source, and you don't find a person who's just a gimmick. I think having people that have been in the profession for a long time, like yourself, us, is a big thing, and trusting that source. And I think people that have protocols and principles, like if you come to Ethos, and one of the biggest things you'll see an amazing staff, but it's all one. It's not Bob doing Bob's methods, Luba doing Luba's methods, Dan's doing Dan methods. It's a methodology in itself, and that's where you'll see the most outcome, the most results. And then also too, you'll have a lifelong partner with a lot of people in a great, amazing environment. So if that's an Ethos, great. But also too, if it's another place, I suggest finding something like that where you have a community and you have somebody who's going to hold you accountable, but they're also very smart in what they do.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
One person.
Thank you so much to Dan Moses for joining me today and sharing his experience working with athletes at every level, from everyday people to Olympic competitors. I hope this conversation gave you some insight into how training, discipline, and consistency can translate far beyond elite sport and into the way we approach our own health and performance. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with a friend, like, comment, and subscribe. It really helps us grow this community and bring you more conversations like this. As always, take care of your health and your wellness.